Hey everybody, it is beautiful out. Look at this green behind me. Green on my body, earthling. I am an earthling. It's my story, I'm sticking to it. So today there's like there are four items that I've been thinking about, which I'm going to see if I can tie together, even though I admit up front there is probably no reason to tie them together. There's just four things I'm thinking about. First, the whole Palestine, I guess it was Hamas. Some Palestinian organization launched rockets into Israel. Israel massively over-responds. Kills far more people, than were killed by the Palestinian rockets. People, citizens groups go mad and, drag Palestinians from their car, beat them unconscious in the streets, and continue beating them even after they've gone limp, And the U.S., there's no way the U.S. can be considered a neutral or, fair broker between the Palestinians and Israel. We give Israel shit tons of money and loads of military gear. There's Obama, on his way out the door, gave an unprecedented gift of like $38 billion of military aid to Israel. There's no way the U.S. can possibly be considered any sort of objective, third party in this instance. And it is totally normal for Democrat politicians for decades now to, completely skew any talk, any discussion of this matter to favor Israel. So Andrew Yang, running for mayor of New York City. Don't know if this will get me banned, but there's a lot of Jews in New York City. There are more Jews living in New York City than there are in any other place outside of Israel in the whole frickin' world. You don't get elected mayor of New York City without the Jewish vote. Or, at least you don't want to try to have to do that. So, and this, Andrew Yang issued a tweet. I'm not sure if it was a tweet. It was a statement. And it didn't sound at all like, it was him talking. It sounded like some advisor to his campaign said, here is what a normal Democratic candidate says about Israel anytime there's any conflict with the Palestinians. Israel has a right to defend itself, point blank. That's total milquetoast, total middle of the road. Just, it is anodyne, as anodyne can be, in terms of the politics of the United States, and particularly the Democratic Party, in recent decades. We support Israel unequivocally, done. And Andrew Yang put out a statement that said basically that. And then, oops, on his social calendar, he was supposed to go to Astoria and hold some event. Astoria is a neighborhood in Queens where a lot of Muslims live. And he was going to go and do this during Ramadan. Oops, just after this, pro-Israel statement that he put out. Which, again, to me, didn't sound like Andrew Yang at all. Did not sound like it was composed in his voice. It was just a total boilerplate Democratic candidate support for Israel statement written by, a strategist, a campaign advisor. And Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, a representative, congressperson from New York City. She could have, there were lots of Democratic politicians who made similar statements. Nancy Pelosi among them, Chuck Schumer, Joe frickin' Biden. Joe Biden is the most pro-Israel Democrat, I think, to ever occupy the White House, which is saying something. And, she's going to pick on somebody, for not showing empathy for the Palestinians. And who does she pick? Does she pick somebody who's had decades worth of influence on crafting U.S. policy toward the region? Or does she pick Andrew Yang, a guy who's never held any elected office ever, bears zero responsibility for U.S. policy toward Israel and the Palestinians? Well, of course, she picks Andrew Yang. Because, she's in total support of Mama Bear. She's never going to say anything bad about Pelosi. She's never going to say anything bad about Joe Biden. So yeah, pick on some guy who, not only is he safe to pick on because he bears no responsibility whatsoever for the current policy or for the trajectory of relations between, the United States and Israel and the Palestinian territories, but Andrew Yang is hated by the Democratic Party establishment because he doesn't have a place anywhere in their org chart. He's not coming up through their organization. He just put the Democrat name, the D next to his name when he decided which party to run in, for president, coming out of nowhere. So he owes nothing to the party establishment, and the party establishment hates him, and the news media hate him because they are on the same team as the Democratic Party establishment. So he's a super safe person to beat up on. And the left, the crazy nutty left, hates him because Andrew Yang actually champions the cause of normal people. And part of championing the cause of normal people, and normal people, it's in the title of his book, it's not me putting those words in his mouth. He is a champion for normal people. Normal people are ones who don't have the extraordinary cognitive abilities to really get ahead in big tech, say. Who don't have the opportunities to capitalize on, having capital, having a lot of money, having insider information about what the markets are about to do. These are just normal people who used to do okay, just working normal jobs, living normal lives, and now they don't. But the left hates those people. They hate normal people because normal people, they have a lot of categories. They have a lot of cognitive tools, a lot of distinctions, a lot of ways of framing the world that make sense and have made sense and continue to make sense. And the left is insistent that we upend all of those linguistic cognitive conventions, like, man, woman, gay, straight, lesbian, whatever. I mean, all of these categories, which normal people have, for the most part, non-hateful ways of employing just to get around in the world and make sense of the universe, not having the most up-to-date avant-garde opinion on all of these categories marks you as a troglodyte, as a Nazi, as a MAGA, lunatic, and you are to be hated. So Andrew Yang, who champions normal people, is hated for being an avatar of normal people and for just being this smiling, happy warrior who doesn't get mad at people. I'm going on way longer on this topic than I should if I'm going to get to all of these things. So, to me, and I'm largely cribbing from Glenn Greenwald here, who wrote a column about this the day after, Ocasio-Cortez took her very brave, courageous stand against Andrew Yang, who held and there's an EX word I'm looking for. I don't know. Basically held and articulated the same position that all of the Democratic leadership articulate, except these other figures in the Democratic leadership actually bear some responsibility for U.S. policy in this region of the world. So she picks on him. Just an easy, cowardly, safe thing to do for her, to score easy, vacuous points. And everybody, from the far left who hate Andrew Yang because he champions normal people, they dogpile on that. And they're just doing it because it's an easy thing. I mean, that's what you do. You find somebody who said something you object to, and then you demonize them to high heaven, and you tell all your friends, and everybody comes and they dogpiles on. And the dogpile was, we hate Andrew Yang, but what they weren't really thinking was, oh, wait a second. We hate Andrew Yang because he said something which is totally in lockstep with things that all Democrats in power say they agree with. Uh-oh. So now while Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez hasn't explicitly expanded her criticisms to include people who actually bear responsibility for the situation, her bosses, the conversation has expanded. And there's actually, you can say things now like Palestinians are human beings with rights to live, free of oppression. You couldn't say that on NPR before, you couldn't say that certainly on CNN, but now you can. A week later, it's changed. The Overton window has shifted dramatically. Has U.S. policy shifted? Probably not, but it might. The Overton window shift might come before the policy, whereas up till now, the policy has determined the dimensions of the Overton window. Speaking of saying something in public which causes a dramatic shift, what's his name? Elon Musk. Elon Musk has talked trash about crypto recently, and it is suspected, well, Tesla stopped taking payment for their vehicles in Bitcoin, and they claimed environmental motivations for not taking Bitcoin as payment for their vehicles anymore. But also some Twitter dude was saying that Elon Musk is going to destroy the crypto markets by totally cashing out all Tesla holdings in Bitcoin. And Elon Musk actually commented to that tweet and said, yeah, or something to the effect of indeed, or something like that. Is he saying indeed as in you don't know what the hell you're talking about, or indeed, yeah, that's what we're going to do? Either way, Elon Musk knew that that was going to cause a furor and was going to ripple out through the crypto markets, which it did. So Bitcoin, which was over 50,000, a couple weeks ago, was over 60,000 within the past couple months, is now in the high 40s and falling. And I took the opportunity to buy some. Not a lot, way less than one coin. I couldn't come close to getting together the money to buy one coin, but I used the Cash app, and it lets you buy $5 worth of Bitcoin, $10 worth of Bitcoin. So I bought a tiny amount of Bitcoin and a tiny amount of Cardano. Taking advantage of what I'm pretty sure is going to be a temporary dip, but which a lot of people who are panicking think, oh my God, this is it. Crypto is going to zero. It's over. It's not over. I forget. I think it's Ivan. No. There's a crypto YouTuber that I discovered just today through the Expat Files podcast, who was saying the total amount of Bitcoin that Tesla owns is something like 0.02%. I mean, they bought, the amount that they bought, the value of the Bitcoin that Tesla bought, was it late last year, is mind-boggling to normal people like you and me. But in terms of the total value, the total amount of crypto which is available, or which exists, it's minuscule. It's nothing. Elon Musk only has his reputation. He only has his fame and his notoriety and his Twitter presence. The actual amount of Bitcoin that he owns is not sufficient for him to really move, to change the value of the Bitcoin. But what he has is the fact that he tweets all day, like Donald Trump, and unlike Donald Trump, he's still on Twitter, and people pay attention to what he does, and so there's a panic right now. And of course, when Bitcoin falls, everything falls. So if you think that this is the end, and you have any crypto at all, well, yeah, sell it all. Sell it all right now. But I don't think it's the end. I think this is a normal fluctuation in an extraordinary rise in the value of Bitcoin over this year alone. This year it's on a consistently upward trajectory, and there have been corrections that were as large or larger than this in the past. It happens. So to me, this is a buying opportunity. For other people, it's run for the exits. Whatever. So what I think this event is going to be is a demonstration of Elon Musk's social media power, his ability to influence markets, but I think it could also be a demonstration of the limits of his ability to influence markets, particularly the crypto market. Apparently, lots of crypto evangelists really hate Elon Musk, for nasty things he said about crypto in the past, and I suppose the sentiment is mutual, and he's going to fuck with the markets as he can for his own amusement. If for no, he might even be driving down the price intentionally to make a larger purchase. Who knows? But like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's chicken shit attack on Andrew Yang for espousing the exact same position that all of the leadership of her party espouses, while not saying anything about the actual leadership, here we have an instance of somebody making a tweet, having a very dramatic knock-on effect. Maybe it's what they wanted, maybe it isn't, we don't know. But what else does this relate to? What else am I thinking about? I'm thinking about UFOs, or unidentified aerial phenomenon, UAPs. The U.S. government, particularly the military, the Air Force, the intelligence agencies, for decades, they had an active program to seed the cultural conversation around this issue with deliberate misinformation, to coax people into adopting ridiculous points of view, to discredit people who looked at the evidence and came to any conclusion other than swamp gas and mass hysteria. And so, for decades there was this official policy. It wasn't official, as in written up and released to the public, but it was a standing policy of, we are going to belittle anybody who wants to talk about this issue. And then in recent years, I'm not sure exactly how many years, like the last 4 or 5 years, military officials, intelligence officials, various people working in the government who have had access, who have had more access than you and I have to evidence of what's actually going on, are coming out and making statements in the media saying, there's something to this. And most significantly, I guess, they have released video, infrared video captured by fighter pilots, flying sorties, training missions, things like that. And there are these, which to me are not very impressive looking. It's just the source that's impressive. This is an official release from the U.S. military of something caught on infrared cameras. We don't know what it is, but it moves in ways that we can't really account for. So the evidence itself, to me, is not particularly persuasive. It's not moving. It's not dramatic. But it's the release of this information by official sources, which is unusual. And my cynical point of view on this, every time this comes up in the media, is I wonder what it is, what actual meaty story they're trying to direct our attention away from with this bullshit. Maybe it's not bullshit. I don't know. But again, the Overton window here has shifted dramatically. If the U.S. government is willing to release documents, if they're willing to release footage, if they're willing to give their employees or their former employees permission to go out into the world and talk about this without the implicit threat of career destruction and reputation destroying, something has changed. Something behind the scenes has changed. There is a policy change which is reflected in the Overton window change. We can observe the Overton window change. Has the Overton window changed the policy, or has the policy changed the Overton window? I don't know. But something has changed. And sometimes I wonder, is this a way for the mainstream, like the legacy media, the corporate media, to try to retain some relevancy because they have access to sources that the alternative media doesn't have? They have high-level access, so they can present this information. But then I think, no, because Joe Rogan has had very high-level people on his program talking about this, and Joe Rogan is hated by the establishment media. And what's more, every piece of documentation, all the infrared camera footage, all of the evidence which is released through official channels immediately gets taken up and churned and analyzed and exploited by people like me, and people who do this sort of thing on a much higher level than I do, but who are still not part of the corporate media, not part of the legacy media, not part of the information manipulation establishment. What's going on? I don't know. But that's how it relates to these other topics that I'm talking about. The cryptocurrency dip of the moment, and the pretty dramatic shift in what you're allowed to say about, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, even in the legacy media, in the past couple of weeks. And maybe, I don't know if this has had anything to do with it. I think this came late. There was a high-rise building in Gaza that the Israelis took down with airstrikes. To me, the footage looks like controlled demolition, but I'm not going to walk out on that limb. I see no benefit in doing that. But the Israelis destroyed this building, and they gave advance warning that they were going to destroy it so people could exit the building if they decided to. But this was where Al Jazeera had its Palestinian, its operations were out of that building, and the Associated Press was operating out of that building. Israel said that they targeted this building because they thought that Hamas was operating out of this building, but Hamas is the legitimate governing body. They're the power structure. They are the legitimate Palestinian power structure in Gaza. So just saying that maybe there were government offices in that building, that would be like destroying a building in downtown Manhattan and saying, well, we think that maybe the Democratic Party had offices in that building. And I know, Democratic Party officials wouldn't like to be compared to Hamas, but your political parties who have achieved political power through, among other things, elections. Just saying that there might have been Hamas, there might have been people who are officially connected to Hamas who are doing something in that building does not justify bringing down, I don't know how many stories it was, but it's a very tall building. Wouldn't say a skyscraper, but certainly a high-rise building in Gaza. Leveled by the Israeli military in response to rocket attacks on Israel, which have just been, they're so unsophisticated. They are so haphazard in their targeting. Most of them do some property damage, but don't take any lives, and the lives they take are not, they're not the lives of anybody who was specifically targeted. The Israeli forces have the ability to specifically target buildings and people, and they do. So they had a reason to take that building down. I got onto all this because Al Jazeera, while they kind of seem like, outsiders from the U.S. perspective, they are a part of the mainstream corporate legacy media. They're a global cable news channel. And the Associated Press, come on, that is definitely a cog in the legacy media machine. So perhaps Israel is making enemies within the U.S. media establishment, or even the global media establishment, which could cause some break from this, this pattern of absolute pro-Israel policy, which is decades long. Is that coming to an end? I doubt it. I doubt that Israel is going to go begging for military funding anytime soon. I'm sure the U.S. will be there to, write them a blank check as often as they request one. But things are shifting. Okay, that's all. Talk to you later.